to this episode of the Level Design Podcast, in which we take a look at the world of game development through the lens of level design. I am Mark Drew, and joining me is Claire Morley from Threefold Games, Jonathan Wilson from Hangar 13, and a very special guest indeed, Chris Filip. Welcome all.
Hey there, Mark.
Hello. Hey guys.
It's glad to have you all back again. It's been a little while since we've done it as a gang.
It has.
Let me introduce Chris. Chris Filip is a builder of communities, initially with photography, right?
Yeah.
And then more around games. You did a stint working at a small company called Ubisoft, yes, working on that tiny indie game, which is WatchDogs 2. He now teaches level design at the Colchester Institute and even has time to be a co-founder of Game Anglia, which is like East Anglia's biggest game conference. You had Rami Ismail last year, didn't you? As well as hundreds of other great speakers.
Yeah, we had Rami. It was a pleasure for us to have him. We had Bill Roper, which at the time was with Improbable, and it was really great for us to hear from him and be like, hey, I worked for Blizzard, I worked for Disney, and now I'm in front of these hundreds of students who are looking to get into the games industry. Yeah, that was a really cool experience.
That's awesome. Well, welcome all. Where to start? You just do so much stuff. It's a little bit. It makes me feel like I'm not achieving as much as I should do on a daily basis.
Other than starting a podcast and finding the time to have a family and go to events and actually make a living.
Yeah. Yes, that's another thing. I mean, by the podcast is the easy part, Well, actually, don't tell anyone. The podcast is the really hard stuff. It's the stuff that we really have to work at. We have a team of people back here that are chopping the tape, and I don't know how do you do podcasts. But so tell me a little bit. First off, let's go backwards. Tell me a bit about Game Anglia, because that's one event that I haven't heard of, but which is my fault more than anything else. When did it start?
So it's not necessarily your fault. A lot of people haven't heard about it, and that's mainly because we have been focusing on shining a spotlight on the games industry in the east of England. So that's the whole area that has Suffolk and Norfolk and Essex and Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire in it. And we started in 2017, when my co-founder Mark Backler, who's working on Lost Words, and myself got out of another indie meetup, the indie dev meetup back in 2017, and we were like, well, you have a network of people, I have a network of people, there's not really many events happening in the area. What if we were to put our networks together and do something? And then 2 weeks later, we had a space booked at the University of Suffolk and Ipswich, and a few people confirmed. So
2 weeks later, like that. Cut 2 weeks later, training montage. You already got.
Well, sometimes that's all it takes, though. It's like two people, like-minded people coming together and realizing they have something, and there's not a platform like you creating these conferences or networking groups. It just sometimes developers in an area just want a platform provided for them, and then once they do, they start showing up. And it's always great to see communities like foster and grow out of that stuff.
Yeah, and it was that's kind of how it was for us. I mean, we weren't that many of us, but in 2017 we managed to sell out in like 3 weeks. Which we didn't expect, and then we did a bit of digging and realized that while there's not a lot of developers, Cambridge aside, because that's where you have like your Jagexes and your Frontiers and your Ninja Theories. There's not that many studios, but we have Delilah, who are working on the Battletoads reboot, and we have about 2,000 to 3,000 game dev students, and that's when we realized, wait, there's something here. These people are actually hoping to get into the games industry. There's not many people actually helping them other than some very dedicated teachers. So why don't we bring the games industry to them and help them actually stay inspired and potentially find a job? And we managed to get I think 7-8 people so far. Jobs within the games industry as a direct result of attending our events. So that's the achievement for us.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's really cool. You should start taking a little cut of their. Sorry. You shouldn't know. But you've also been. You've got like a lot of access to students because you've been teaching level design. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started back in January. I started working with the Colchester Institute, which is a college in Colchester, which is teaching game design. They have this really cool curriculum that's based around narrative design and working with Unity. And I basically came on the team as the guy who knows Unity and also level design. And I've been helping the students think more about flow, think more about their players, because as a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old making your first game, everybody does the same mistake that all of us have done in the past, where it's like, I'm the player, or they don't play test enough. So those are things that I was able to come forward and say, well, let's organize a playtest, and here's how you ask playtest questions, here's how you observe a playtest, and then here's how you tweak your level based on feedback. Here's how you make your games more accessible, and so on.
That's really interesting. That's a very good skill that I think I need to practice a little bit more. And I think most people is like seeing how you get good data out of playtests. You know.
It takes time, and like it takes practice as well. It's like it's very easy to go tunnel vision when you're building something, right? It's like we can all sit there and build it and say, oh, this is going to be fine and perfect, but sometimes you just need a fresh set of eyes, and it'll just identify little cracks, or like something that's not quite sound in your logic, and they'll instantly find it, but you won't, because you'll even subconsciously just avoid that area that you know is probably not bulletproof, but you need that usability testing just to get it.
I think just like knowing how to sort of like receive feedback as well is such a good skill that like you don't have automatically. And especially like if someone says something about the game, then it might be that, you know, they give you advice on something, but maybe that advice isn't actually what you need to change about the game, but it's, you know, reading between the lines about what they are saying. And yeah, right. I think the more you do that, the more it's... Yeah, you learn how to hear it.
I think, yeah, like you said, reading between the lines is something I think it comes with a bit of experience as well. Like after you've built a couple of levels, or you've had some of your stuff actually go out and actually be played by people, how it's received is usually the important thing. And it's like kind of a question is the feedback you get, it's like, it's not necessarily saying it's bad, because it could be that they don't understand it, but that could be the point. They're not getting that kind of side of it, whereas the message you're trying to send is only received in a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's big companies which are actually investing a lot in getting feedback training, right? So I first heard about that. We were doing an event in Bucharest. We were doing the Global Game Jam Next, which is again for people under 18 who can't participate in the normal Global Game Jam in January. And we got this guy who's the creative director now or the game director for Assassin's Creed. And he basically talked about this amazing training that he did on giving and receiving feedback. And it was just a matter of, oh, wait, there's actually a science there. There's types of listening, there's types of understanding. And you have to really understand why people are saying the things that they're saying, not just what they're saying.
This is one of the tricks of the mind sometimes, that people talk about things without talking about things. And how can I put it? When it's a rubber ducky problem. You've all heard about the rubber ducky issue, right? So they're working away on something, and you can't fix it. Then you go and ask somebody about it, and by reformulating the question, your problem as a question, you sometimes solve it without bothering anybody else. So you can have a rubber ducky on your desk. I have 3 dogs that I talk to, but they're pretty good at coding now. But they solve my problem when I actually talk to them out loud, right? And
no, I think you're exactly right. Like I've had issues like when I'm working on a mission or a level, and it is sometimes just going over to one of my colleagues and going, so if you encountered this issue before, and in rephrasing the question, I suddenly get hit by the solution of what is actually wrong with my logic, and I'm just like, ignore me, I'm just being stupid and walk away.
Yeah. And this poor person sitting there looking at you going, glad to help, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, yes, you did help.
Yeah, it happens really often.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being the rubber duck in university, and I had my flatmate was, I think that's when I started learning programming actually, because my flatmate was a programmer and I didn't know programming at that point, and he would always just be like, can I just like run this by you to see if it makes sense? And I'd just like listen to it. I must have absorbed quite a lot of knowledge that way. But
just throwing information at you to see what sticks.
Yeah, and then eventually just be like, oh, okay, that's how it works, and then wander off.
Are you saying that my dogs are going to start designing levels and then coding?
Yeah, well, you never know.
So aside from teaching that level design, and then you also worked at a company called Ubisoft. Is that right?
Yeah. I worked.
What were you doing there?
So after I finished university in Ipswich, I went into the Ubisoft Summer Experience Program. I think it's called back in Bucharest, in my hometown, as a game designer. Did that for 3 months, and at the end, myself and another artist and an artist who's an amazing technical guy. Stayed on as actual employees, myself on the game design and him on technical art. And I started working on Watch Dogs 2. In Bucharest, we were doing the side mission. So on my side, I did everything in terms of taxis, in terms of racing missions, systems. The level designers were actually doing the plotting the courses. It was my job to make sure that the systems were okay and everything was balanced. So yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and that was really, really good. Learned a lot of things there.
Because Watch Dogs 2 was a hell of a scale up from the first Watch Dogs, wasn't it? I mean, it was like, I'm going to get this wrong. It was based in, I keep wanting to think Detroit,
San Francisco.
Chicago, right?
Yeah. San Francisco.
No. So the first one was
yes, the first one.
Yeah, the first one
meant Chicago.
Because it's same place as Parks and Rec, right? But then then Watch Dogs 2 moved over to San Francisco, and that's a much more complex and non-grid-like city. And
yeah, I feel from Watch Dogs 1 to Watch Dogs 2, like you were, as much as like it was still an open world game, you were still kind of confined in your abilities, whereas Watch Dogs 2, you were given a massive toy box and basically just allowed to go wild in the city pretty much. By contrast, that's what if you put them side by side, that's kind of what it looks like, because you seem to have a lot more freedom there. And also it didn't seem to try to it wasn't taking itself as serious. I didn't find, like, whereas in the first one, like they tried to get some kind of gritty tone with like the character development and stuff like that and the backstory, whereas in the second one they seemed to just like go all in on the hacking element side of it.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, from my perspective, that was what really made it unique and allowed us to tell some really, really cool stories. So part of my job was doing a lot of research into the social issues that were happening in San Francisco at the time, that were happening around Silicon Valley versus everybody else, around gentrification. So as somebody who was in Bucharest, quite far away from anything US. I'd never been to US at the time. Suddenly, I was researching everything that I needed to be able to create some realistic or credible scenarios. So as I said, in terms of the taxi stuff, we were basically emulating Uber, and I had to research and understand what was the issue around Uber, because in Romania we were all happy, in Bucharest we were all happy that Uber had finally come into town, and we were suddenly, we didn't need to always carry cash on us, and we had nice cars to drive around in. But in San Francisco, it's obviously different. People do that as their second or third job. So it took a lot of cultural shifting to be able to understand more about that.
Yeah, I've only visited San Francisco once, but yeah, you're right. Like, I did use Uber while I was there, and it was like, for them, it was just their like second or third job, and they would just clock on in between jobs or whatever just to pick up a bit of extra cash, which speaks volumes, obviously, for how expensive it must be to live there if people are doing this alongside a full-time job. A lot of them seem to be in like the medical profession as well, at least from what I realized while I was there.
Wow. See, like, you can't put politics into anything. You always end up talking about politics in any, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a game or anything like that. So this week there's been quite a few digs at the game industry for like saying, oh no, this game's not political. But look, here's a perfect example of where level design has to follow the human issues around an area, right?
It does, and it plays a lot into the design elements as well. And I think quite a few of us have experience with that, where you're like, well, what would happen if we were to add this?
it's like at the end of the day, you've got to research and tackle all those issues, especially if you're working on almost a game set in semi-reality. Like, you've got to understand the issue a little bit yourself to be able to deal with that. And also, like, you want to create a believable space at the end of the day. So sometimes you do need to go into the more, like, kind of subjective areas where it could turn people the wrong way, but it's to build a believable world that you have the player going through.
I guess even if you're not making something that's sort of set in reality, it's still... You just have to make that stuff, don't you? Because otherwise, like you say, it's not a believable world if there's no politics.
Yeah, I was about to say, if there's no like politics or world going around you, like, you can make it up, obviously, if you're coming up with a complete like sci-fi thing, but like the pillars you'll use to build that society or whatever, it'll be based off real life. It's just nature, basically.
And especially in Watch Dogs too, because I think that was not... That wasn't even a what if. It was just a stylized version of kind of what we have already. None of the technology in it was, none of it was too far-fetched.
It was just taking it one step further, and now we see a lot of the things that the narrative designers and that the creative directors had in there, right? So there's this whole discussion now around using facial recognition or not using facial recognition as the security or the police enforcement, right? And that's something that was in that game. It was something that our fellow level designers in Bucharest worked on. The whole plot that had to do with Alcatraz and with CCTV being used for crime prediction. So we now see those things, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially in London, we have like whatever, you're captured 300 times on your way to work. I mean, I don't, because I work in my house. But
I mean, you might.
That's only 3 times when I get captured here. But
they've still got you though. You're still in the system.
I am in the system. But no, wow, this is prescient, because today a news story was that the police are using video cameras to catch you, and then, in fact, even in China, because they can do these sweeping technological changes because of they don't have democracy to stop them to do this. You can actually now pay for stuff with facial recognition, right? It's not on your phone.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Really?
So because they used to use. I'm going to go. They pay with everything in WeChat anyway. So, they have a barcode there and you just pay with the barcode. So they said, well, why even have that? You can just have facial recognition, and they're doing that.
Well, that's what Amazon wanted to do as well with their Amazon Go shops, right? Where they basically track you as you come in, and they're like, oh yeah, this person got this item, this item, and this item, and we'll just bill it to them. And they track you because they have your face as well as, beacons and so on. Yeah,
well, that's what's going to be happening. That's the first place it'll happen is Silicon Valley, but that's because people have got a major buy-in because they'll work for these companies. Mm-hmm. I think it's a weird one that is, capitalism's going full circles, because now, you're going to be living in an Amazon house, buying from an Amazon shop and getting paid in Amazon dollars that you owe to the company. And we're back to the 1800s. And this is This Week in Politics on the Level Design Podcast. But moving away from that, so I've got other stuff that I wanted to comment with you guys and see what you thought about. So last week I actually caught up on a little video production called No Clip. Have you guys heard of No Clip?
Yeah, they do documentaries, right?
Yeah, they do Patreon-backed documentaries on game design, and they did a whole range on all of the Hitman games. They went to IO Interactive, and they did all of that, and I then learned what a team for level design. There's so many layers upon layers of in game design.
It's like if you look at any Hitman game, like you can see why it takes so long to build one of those spaces, like the systemic nature behind it, like populating that level, and especially the more recent ones, because like each one became a self-contained space, right? It was like each one, like the season before Hitman 2, it was meant to be episodic, but every episode was like feature complete with enough replay value. It was huge.
Yeah. And this is one of the things I've been now been thinking about. We have tools like Unreal Engine and Unity, but the tools that they're using for the mission design is just like one step beyond, because it's very specific to the game, right?
Yeah, it's all in-house tools, right? It's tech built specifically to build that type of game. Obviously, they can eventually develop their tech and pivot and shift it later on, but right now it is custom built to build a Hitman game.
Yeah.
That's what that feature set's there for.
But I was just so amazed about all of that. It made me like start following and actually start replaying, because I know it's meant to be replay value, but who's got a chance? I just stumble into a level, kill everyone, and flop out and
move on.
Scrape myself off the floor like as people are shooting me, and then make it to the exit as flashbangs disappear behind me, you know. But now it's actually made me want to go back and start going to every nook and cranny and start actually examining that. What games inspire you, Chris, to do that? Aside from Hitman,
I think there's a lot of open world games which allow you to play with the systemic nature of systems. So, you know, looking at the way that The Witcher is done, or looking at the way that Horizon Zero Dawn is done. When I played Horizon Zero Dawn, because it was more or less developed in the same time as we were developing Watch Dogs 2, I was like, oh, we had that too. Oh, we had that too. So you're looking at what really inspired me in that one is the awesome way that they made combat feel, because you always get almost that Dark Souls feel, right? Where you don't know if you're going to make it alive, even if it's one of the first few creatures. Just because if they gang up on you, or if you misstep and get stunned, then that's something where suddenly you can easily die. And you look at the way that they designed each area so that it's easier or harder to get into, not just from the creatures and their behavior, but also from the topology of the area. So how the height of different obstacles, and then the types of creatures that they populated the area with, because it might be quite easy to take out, I don't know, 2 medium-sized saber-tooth creatures, but not if they also have their friends which are small and agile around them, for example. So it's games which have complexity. That's what I like, and I'm now really looking forward to John Wick Hex. So seeing that, right, I'm really excited about how the level design is going to be on that.
Yeah, Mike Bithel's stuff is really going to the next level, because they managed to do all the circular games. I say all of them, all 2 of them, but which were like super simplified. I mean, I say simplified. They had a very interesting mechanic. Have you guys played them? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a very each conversation brings up a tag, and you're trying to ask about those tags to expand a tag, like a tagged word, to discover a mystery generally. So it's like super branching narrative, I guess. Yeah.
Wikipedia again.
Kind of like Wikipedia.
No, I'm not going to say yes, because Mike Bithell is going to kill me if I say yes, Wikipedia the game. But yeah, no, that's what I'm going to describe it as now. But John Wick has got, like, from what I've seen, which is a system of chess moves to get to the end, right?
But in real time. Well, almost real time, right?
Almost real time. Because at the end of it, you get a replay, so then you look like a real badass.
It's like super hot from that point of view with that replay.
Right.
Where it's like, here's how awesome you looked after your 20th try.
Yeah. I wish someone could do that for my Hitman level playing, because, oh my God. I don't know when that's coming out. That's coming out later on this year, isn't it? Or
I don't think they announced a release date on that.
Oops,
Unless you know something.
I know nothing. I am guessing just by the level of promotion that's been happening. Or maybe that was just around E3. But they won all the awards, so...
Did they put a demo out on the Epic Store? Or did they just announce that it's going to be on the Epic Store?
Yeah, I think they did a sale on it, so I've actually pre-ordered it. So they did a pre-sale...
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a pre-sale or it was like a demo you got through the Epic Store, like for pre-ordering it or whatever.
No, it's a pre-order, and they kind of paid for the difference. So it was on sale, and they paid them the difference or whatever it was, which seems very nice of them.
Yeah, so John Wick Hex, a really cool. While I was seeing the trailer, a really cool game that reminded me of was Door Kickers. Don't know if any of you played it.
Not Door Kickers. No. I think I saw another one, which was being made. It's about cops, and basically it is like you kick the door down, and Rico. which was...
Yeah, I've heard of Rico, yeah.
I did a tiny bit of work on that game.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, not anything exciting, but yeah, moving some objects around.
It's the same kind of like top-down view, and you're controlling basically a SWAT squad trying to kill terrorists and the like, but it's all real time, and you're giving them instructions. So go here, throw grenade, shield, and stuff like that. I'm having a look at the Rico trailer at the moment, and it looks very similar to that. Yeah, but first person.
So that's why I conflagrated both of them. So you're very much into the tactical stuff. I mean, this is I'm going to say it's all born out of XCOM, I guess. The tactical approach or the real time strategy, I guess, is a misnomer.
It feels a little bit like both, I think, but with like the more John Wick stuff in it, like really cool moves, at least for John Wick Hex. For Door Kickers, I'm guessing it was born out of RTS plus a real passion for squad tactics.
One of the things that I haven't been able to get my head around from a game development point of view is doing those kind of real-time kind of tactical kind of game systems. But I think that might be like a challenge for a game jam to like see if I can focus on something like that. And even if it's just like get to the pair, you have to get from here to there to steal a pair or something. That's my limit of game jam knowledge, by the way.
It's an interesting mindset to get into. Like, I've not done much on kind of turn-based stuff or strategy-based stuff, but it does require a kind of, I guess, different form of thinking. So it's kind of, we've brought up on the podcast before, like there's so many different forms of design that you can go into, and like depending on what you're working on depends on the type of design you'll end up doing.
So talking about design, I stumped up the cash. I asked everyone what I should get, and I got myself an Oculus Rift S. For work reasons, obviously.
Yeah,
Sure.
It's the only way that I could actually, get it. I had to put it because it's a work expense. We all agree that, yes?
Yeah.
Legally?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Yep.
But I thought instead of just beat sabering or playing Robo Recall for work purposes, which is a lot of fun for work purposes, I've got to say. I actually started using it in some of the levels that I've been designing, but not in the sense of a player, but as a designer, actually, because if Unreal Engine allows you to actually plop into the environment and start looking around what you've built. And it has been a very interesting experience, I've got to say, which has taught me that my that I don't know space as well as I do when I'm top down.
I think like that's inevitable. Like one of the first things I realized when working in VR is similar to what you're saying is you get away with so much when you're not actually going in the actual space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean first person, right? Because I've played it in first person, obviously, and it looks fine.
Yeah, but when you're in a VR setup, it's completely different. Like it is like you're there. If there's one thing that's not right, if the scale's off or anything, you will notice. You will notice straight away. And there is that disconnect between whether it's first person or third person games. There's still a lot you can mask, but in VR you won't get away with it.
But what was interesting was once you got in there, I started going, oh no, these tables have to be a little bit apart because obviously you can't walk between them. This table looks a little bit short. It's like
I think when you start doing building VR spaces or building spaces in VR like you've been trying now, or when you start developing for VR in general, one of the biggest things you'll start to go back to is affordance theory and looking into different affordances, because as soon as you're in there and you have hands or whatever and you can interact, you have to now second guess everything you put in that space. It's is it needed? Because if it's not, the player's still going to try and use it, and if they can't, they're disconnected straight away. And it's kind of one of the biggest buzzwords that came out around about the time VR development became a thing. It went from immersion to presence,
right?
And it's if you break the presence, that's basically you've lost lost the player. That used to be kind of one of the biggest things we had going.
I think that there's a lot of to be said and a lot to be seen still in terms of how you do level design or how you design properly for VR. I think it's no coincidence that the most played VR game, as you were saying earlier with Beat Saber, still is basically something that you would play at an arcade standing still. Like, it just has a really cool level of immersion with the lightsabers, but you don't see that many narrative adventures or first person shooters. And I think it's really cool to start seeing VR kind of like develop itself. And as you were saying, the fact that you can now, as a level designer, just go in and like design a level, that's really cool. Like, let's see IKEA doing that. I'd love to design my living room in VR and then
just design straight away. You can actually feel around inside it.
Yeah, exactly. Room scale.
Yeah, real room scale. I mean, it's been quite an interesting little experience. One of them is because one, there's no manual with it, so it's literally, here you go, here's your controls, and you're like, well, great. I've got a whole bunch of icons on my left hand and a wand on my right hand. I have no idea what any of this is.
Sounds quite fun. Just like try things out. See what they do.
Yeah. I mean, you just start trying stuff out, but then there's okay. I've just flung that wall out into space. It's,
So you're not talking necessarily from the headset point of view. You're talking about it being in a reel and building stuff. It's not documented that way. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's not stuff that I've built for the manipulation of stuff. It's stuff that's the tools. Like, you can either play it as a player, you can play it in VR, or you can edit it in VR. In fact,
in VR,
it's
definitely something I'd be interested in trying, like building in using a VR headset and actually assembling a space. I do wonder like how long it takes to build a space when you've got that level of detail, though. When you're actually in at the correct size of, for instance, a room. Like how long that takes to put all the walls up, all the door frames up, in comparison to doing it from that top-down perspective you'd usually have in a 3D package.
Just moving around as well, just like, is it sort of a hassle to, or like, I suppose it's the same thing, the perspective of like the top-down, if you're like, I'm in this room and I need to get over here, but then you have to also think, how do I get to that when you can't see it from that perspective?
I mean, even trying to think about something like The Sims in VR, that'd be really, really interesting when you think about the fantasy of actually building your own house and decorating it and just having all of those options. That'd be really cool. I'm curious whether or not, because my intuition says it's going to be easier to design VR levels while you're in VR as well. But I wonder if there's any benefit to building levels in VR which are then going to be played like top down or in any non-VR perspective.
It might be, because I haven't tried it enough to, and I'd like to hear from any of our listeners if they have or have more experience than we have on this. You then have toys in front of you, right? So if you scale it out, then you're looking at your level as a model in front of you. Right, that you can spin around.
I get what you mean.
The only problem, I think, is then you can start getting a bit of motion sickness, because if you're inside, I was inside a spaceship because that's what I was playing around with. But if you let spin the whole level around, which is fine when you're looking at this window on your desktop, but when suddenly you're standing there and your whole environment just span around you, you're then on the floor vomiting, you know?
Yeah, so there's precautions and kind of like safety nets that would have to be put in for that, so you don't end up throwing up while you're building your kind of environment. But I do think it's got like a lot of applications. I do think if you, especially if you're building a VR game, if you were to build the space or the rooms you're going to in VR, it would probably reduce like the amount of iteration time on a space to get the scale of something right, or to get the size of the room to feel correct, because you'd be building it at the right scale, because you're building it there, not from a pulled out perspective in 3ds Max or whatever you're using to build your geometry.
But having said that, there has been some in the Oculus. You have the desktop, so you can actually look at your desktop. So like popping out, I haven't got it all working, but popping out of VR so that you actually just see your desktop and start working. You know, sit down with your VR helmet and just do all the work, and then just press back in, and you can then.
It'd be interesting to kind of design a whole level in like not in VR, and then another one like in VR completely, and just see how different they are though. Because you know what you were saying at the start about, well, what you were saying about the sort of like scale and things. I wonder how much difference, like if you could tell once you'd made those two, if someone could sort of say, oh yeah, this one's obviously been made built? Like because someone's been standing inside it. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how much difference it does make.
I don't know, this sounds like a challenge.
Yeah.
It sounds like
I think it might be.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you have all the equipment.
Report back next podcast.
Yeah. I might have to put up a couple of them. I've been busy doing a little level before they release the game Remedy Control. So I did a bit of a tribute to one of their levels, and I'm now like, okay, should I do another level? You know, because I've got the base reference, so I'm not like basing it from my mind.
The style of Control, yeah. But
I can say, okay, so if I'm going to build this, I can build it like this, or then actually go in and build it in real. I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's just too much of a challenge. I don't know. But anyway, so we've talked about Hitman. We've talked about the things. What are you working on next, all of you? Or are you all under NDAs? There's no point telling it.
It's the massive NDA thing, right?
Okay, well, this is the NDA section of the show. Promise you don't tell anyone. But if you have any questions, dear listener, you can tweet at me. I'm unsurprisingly at Mark Drew on Twitter. Chris, how can they find you if you want anyone to get in contact with you, ask you questions, or if not, we'll.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to have people ask me questions about anything, especially if you want to get like into education, or if you want to understand more about game events in general. Game Anglia can be found at Game Anglia, and I can be found at WizRares, which is really hard to actually pronounce. So it's WIZRARES.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And yeah,
I'm pointing below.
And in terms of what we're working on at the moment is the November conferences, and it's actually quite interesting that we're talking with two other level designers, because one of the things that we're hoping to do is have a level design workshop at Game Anglia this year. So
cool. Wish
us luck.
So yeah, are you looking for level designers to come and run the workshop, or attendees?
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea behind it is how do you get a job as a level designer, right? Because you get game designers do game design tests, artists do art tests, programmers do whiteboard tests. What do level designers do to get a job? And it would be great to actually do a workshop and and talk about that. Put our participants through some tests and talk about what people are actually looking for when they're hiring a level designer.
It so depends on the game, doesn't it?
It depends on the company, but at the end of the day, what do you do if you just want a job? As a level designer, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question to pose to people, and especially students looking to get into the industry, because like you said, it does depend on the game, but largely it will be company dependent, because it depends on the tools they're using and things like that. If a company uses proprietary tools, they can't really give you a full test, right? They can't say build a level in this engine, because it's not like Unity or Unreal. So like the test has to be kind of changed a little bit, or at least that's what I've seen in my experience of like applying for different jobs and stuff.
The Level Design Podcast, bringing people together.
That's what we do.
Cool. Jonathan, you're on the Twitters as...
at Omni/92.
I have to ask you one day what that means.
If you don't know, I'm just like probably not going to tell you and be slightly ashamed.
Fine.
I will tell you one day. It's not that hard.
Claire?
My Twitter's at Shimmerwitch.
And we're at Level Design FM. So you can get in contact with us, rate us. I mean, if you're listening to this, I don't have to tell you how to subscribe to us, but we might. But if you subscribe, that would be nice. Rate us in wherever place you want to rate us, or just say hi. I think that's it for the show. Thank you very much, everyone, and We'll see you on the next time. This has been a Command Studio production. Our editor is Matthew Lever, and our producer is Bridie Rose.